Hey everybody, this is episode 2 of graphing sine and cosine waves. So if you are watching this without watching the intro video, you probably want to pause, go back and watch that guy first. That explains in detail what the A, B, C, and D are. Remember, C and D could also be H and K because you're used to that from other shifts. H is still the horizontal shift and K is still your vertical shift. In this case, we have C and D. So what we're going to do is talk about multiple parts or multiple transformations in graphs and work our way all the way up to one that has 4 different shifts. So the first thing you're always going to want to do with these is list some of the important information. So remember, the amplitude is our A value. So the amplitude is 2. It's not 2 up, it's not 2 down, it's not -2. Because remember, it's above and below your center line known as your node. Our period is 2 pi divided by, in this case, 1. It's our B value. So our period is just 2 pi. Our interval is our period divided by 4. So in this case, 2 pi divided by 4 is pi over 2. Now this is not a shock to you because this is what a standard parent graph of sine or cosine looks like. There's no horizontal shift, and there's a vertical shift of 1 up. So I'm going to show you, my opinion, the best way to do these. You can do it any way you want, but this is what I have found has worked best for students. So that's what I'm going to show you. One quick thing before we go. I want you to think about a standard sine or cosine wave, and it starts in a few places. Sine will always start at the node or the center line. Reason why is because the sine of 0 is 0. And then if it was a positive sign, it's just going to go up. So that's what a positive sign will always look like. Negative sign, remember, if it's negative, it's a reflection over the x-axis. So we would start by going down. In terms of cosine, we talked about the cosine of 0 is 1. So a standard cosine graph or a positive cosine graph will start at the top. And if it was reflected over the x-axis, a negative cosine would start at the bottom. Now that might be a little bit helpful to you in terms of graphing these. So let me just show you what we're going to do. Again, in my opinion, the first thing you should do is mark out your coordinates or your x-axis. So our interval is pi over 2. So we have 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, and 4 pi over 2. Remember, 4 pi over 2 is 2 pi, which is our period, which is going to land on the 4th tick mark. And of course, you can scale it going backwards. The second thing I recommend that you do whenever you're doing any of these is draw a node line for your vertical shift. So we have a vertical shift of 1 up. That means this entire graph is going to be shifted up 1. So there's your new node. That's the node line or the center line. Our amplitude is what we would graph next. So the first thing, like I said, mark out your X tick marks. Second step, graph your node line. Third, mark out your top and bottom, which is your amplitude. Remember, the amplitude is how far above, so it's 2 units above, and 2 units below your node line. So your amplitude is going to appear twice. We have 2 and we have 2. And then after that, if you had a horizontal shift, you would graph a line to represent the horizontal shift. Now there is none, so we can just highlight the y-axis just so you can see it. And now we're ready to graph. So all we have to do is look at the fact that this is a negative sign. So remember, sine always starts on your node line, your center line. And since it's negative, it's been reflected over the x-axis. So instead of going up first, we're going to go down first. So our next tick mark is going to be at pi over 2, but we're going to be down at the bottom, known as the trough. And then remember, on your way back up, you always need to stop at the node. And then we're going to go all the way to the top, and then, of course, back to the node. When you go backwards, you take your pattern and you go and follow it. You don't come back down, you keep on going back up. And then you come back, hit the node, down to the trough, back to the node. And then you just graph your wave. Now, these are not straight lines, people. I don't want to see straight lines on quizzes or tests. I want you to make it a wave. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just don't do straight lines. Okay? And that's it. That had a vertical stretch of 2, a reflection over the x-axis, and it was shifted up by 1. Next example. We have a b value change, and we have a horizontal shift this time. So this example, our amplitude is 1. When there's no number in front, it's not 0, it would just be a flat line. Our amplitude is 1. Our period is 2 pi divided by our b value, which in this case is 1/2. 2 pi divided by 1/2 is 4 pi. So our first thing, as I've recommended before, is scale your x-axis. The fourth tick mark will be your period, which is 4 pi. Your interval is your period divided by 4. So it's going to go up by pi at a time. So we have 1 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, and of course 4 pi, which is our period. We have a horizontal shift of pi to the right. And we have no vertical shift. So the first thing we did was scale the x-axis like I suggested. Second thing you should do is your vertical shift. There is none. This is on the x-axis. Third thing you should do is your amplitude. So 1 above and 1 below your node line. And finally, your vertical shift at pi to the right. So you would put a vertical line, your horizontal shift of pi to the right. You put a vertical line at pi. Now this is a positive cosine. A positive cosine graph should start at the top. And then we're just going to hit the node, down to the bottom, back to the node. Go backwards to do the exact same thing. And you're good to go. This is what your graph looks like. And we're good. So that is what our cosine of 1/2. So it looks the same, and like I said, that's because we scaled this to 4 pi. If we didn't, it would only complete half a cycle by the time it got to 2 pi. Alrighty, next one. So we have 3 sine of 4x. 4 is your b value. So for this guy, we have an amplitude of 3. Our period is 2 pi divided by our b value of 4. So our period is pi over 2. So our fourth tick mark is pi over 2. Our interval is pi over 2 divided by 4, which is going to give us pi over 8. So we have 1 pi over 8, 2 pi over 8, 3 pi over 8, and of course 4 pi over 8. And now we've scaled that. We have no shifts of any kind. So the only thing this example is intending to do is show you what happens with a different b value. So we have no vertical shift. We have an amplitude of 3, so that's 3 above your node and 3 below your node. We have no horizontal shift, so we're starting at the y-axis. And then all we have to do is pick our starting point. Positive signs. Sine always starts on the node. The positive goes up first. So this one we have changed the x-axis, we've scaled it, but we're stretching this by a factor of 3, so that's why it's much taller than any other graph we've done so far. Okay, so then you're just going to sketch it out, and you're good to go. Done. Last example is going to have 4 different shifts. Now, before we do this example, I want to show you something that might happen. Another way to write this equation is -2 cosine of 2x plus pi minus 1. I want you to always remember that it's much easier to graph this if your b value is out in front of the parentheses. So if you see this on any quiz or test, make sure you factor out the b value. So we would factor out a 2, so our 2 would be in front. 2x divided by 2 is x, and pi divided by 2 is pi over 2. Okay, so just make sure you factor out your b if it isn't already done for you. Okay, so let's list all of our fun information. And we're going to do this one, since there's 4 different pieces, we're going to color coordinate each piece. So our amplitude is 2. Remember, it's not -2, it's a 2. Our period, that changes the x-axis. It's 2 pi divided by our b value of 2. So our period is pi. And then, of course, our interval is our period divided by 4. So that would be our interval. So we have pi over 4. And then we have 2 pi over 4. We have 3 pi over 4. And then 4 pi over 4. Our horizontal shift is pi over 2 to the left. And our last transformation is our vertical shift of 1 down. So x-axis is already scaled, we're good. That's the first thing you always want to do. Second thing you want to do is your vertical shift. We are 1 down, so we put our node line 1 down. Our amplitude is 2, so we go 2 units above the top, or above the node to get our top, and 2 units below the node to get our bottom. We have a horizontal shift, pi over 2 to the left. So we're going to put a vertical line at pi over 2 to the left. And now we get to start graphing. This is a negative cosine. So cosine usually starts at top, but a negative cosine is how we reflect over the x-axis, and we start at the bottom. And now follow the pattern. Node, top, node, bottom. You never want to graph on the x-axis unless that happens to be your node, top, or bottom. A lot of times people accidentally hit the x-axis on their way. No, you only do your node, top, and bottom. Okay? I skipped that guy going backwards. I'm supposed to delete this guy here and here. Sorry about that. So now, we just need to start graphing. So we were at the bottom. We're going to start by going up and come back down and go back up. And going back this way, we're going to go back up to the top. And remember, these will never cross the top or bottom. So do not extend as if it goes on forever that way. Big no-no. Make sure you stop it at the top or bottom. If you want to show arrows to show that it continues, pull them back down or shoot them back up if it hits the top or bottom. Okay? So that's it for this video on multi-stepped transformations with sine and cosine waves. This is Longo and I'm out. See you, bye.